lengthy prayer for this country. What I could have expected, where I see it, is that these prayers that were called by the president, they were, it was well done in good spirit. The only thing that I would have wanted is that I would have wanted to see the president extend a hand to the opposition and call them and say, listen guys, come we pray together. Then to me it would have made sense. But it turned out, you know, it turned out to be almost another political rally in that prayer when someone like my friend Governor Waititu took center stage and started, you know, naming and calling names the NASA side. For me, I would have expected it to be a very genuine prayer, and I really liked the way the president prayed. It's just that I would have really wanted, you know, to see the president calling upon the opposition also to join them in prayer. It would have made a lot of sense.
From which book did your priests, you know, preach yesterday?
By the way, let me tell you, when I watched the prayers in Nakuru,
I don't think you went.
No. When I watched that, if I cannot quote books, that is not substantiation that I was not in church. But when I watched prayers in Nakuru, to be very sincere, politicians are very good preachers. Politicians can really quote Bible like no one can.
No, but we don't have evidence. They just cram for the day.
But they really know how to interpret the Bible. Politicians are great.
Martin, I don't think he went to church. You simply asked a simple question of what his preacher had preached.
Preached about the
preached peace.
The title of
from which book? Anyway, I wasn't at Nakuru. And I don't think I would even be there, even if I was given a chance, simply because I have always believed that Kenyans have always been a prayerful, you know, country. We've been praying a lot for this nation. We have been praying before the August 8th elections. We have been praying from the time immemorial. We've been praying. Our constitution says, you know, we are a God-loving country. So I don't think there was really need to call, you know, because the calls for the prayers seemed to be an alarm call, you know, seemed to be a sort of like a solution to the Jubilee side of things, a solution to the current, you know, tension that's going on. But you see, for me, I say, just like Peter, you know, if 1 minute you're saying you're praying and in the course of the prayers it turns to be political, then one wonders, was it really just another political rally at Nakuru? And you see the fact that a lot had happened over the weekend. We had a plane that, you know, went down at Lake Nakuru, and the bodies are yet to be found till now. And yet, you know, I expected that even though I would not have attended the prayers, I expected to see that be one of the things that, you know, the persons who attended the prayer would really give highlight about. But, well, it seemed to have just slipped the program. So, and also there were concerns that, I mean, these prayers were, at some point, they turned to be held in one, you know, one language, one tribal dialect, and one wonders how national are these prayers if, I mean, if then it all turns out to be a party affair and no offense, but a tribe affair.
But the question is, what can we do as a country to end this hatred? Because what stops you, as Ruth Ambogo, from going to Nakuru, if you want this to be national prayers, if that's your argument, because there cannot be national prayers when you're not going, when Peter is not going, when, say, whoever else is not going. So can we accuse the people who have opted to go and pray? And the second thing is the fact that we keep praying as a country. I prayed this morning before I came. Does it invalidate the very fact that you can call for national prayers?
I don't
to just
think,
come together as all Christians did.
You know, I don't think we should castigate those who decided to attend the prayers and anyone else who would have had an interest in going for the prayers but never had a chance. I think the question should be that, is that really the solution to tribal, you know, hatred that is currently ongoing? Is that the solution?
It's part of the solution.
I understand that it's part of the solution, but I think sometimes as a nation we tend to use prayer as a cover for not dealing with the issues right on, head on, you know. A lot of times, I mean, we can start praying for corruption to go away, but if the leaders are not willing to stop being corrupt, if the leaders are not willing to become men and women of integrity, then those prayers are useless. We can pray about tribalism and hatred, you know, diffusing, but if right after those prayers, tribalism and hate speech is what takes the center stage, then the motive for those prayers is questioned. And that's where I think now, you know, my decision not to go to pray clearly was validated, because if I went to pray and right after the prayers, we have, men who we expect to provide leadership for this country, dive right heading into hate speech, calling names, the other, coalition members and leaders, then you wonder what really is the essence of prayer. And I think, at this point, what we need right now is not really prayers per se, because we have been praying. It is not cosmetic prayers from political leaders. What we need right now, we don't need cosmetic prayers from political leaders who tend to use them as a tool to, again, propagate propaganda and even begin calling names the other opposition party. If these people truly wanted to pray, they should have gone there, went down on their knees and made the whole agenda about prayer. But when 1 minute they're praying, the next minute they're calling names, one wonders. And I really don't think that, no offense, at this point in time, prayer really isn't the solution to tribalism. We really just need to have honest conversations, because even within these churches that purport to hold the prayers, there's a lot of tribalism that's going on. So, is it really going to cure tribalism if the leaders of the churches themselves, if the political leaders themselves, right after prayers, continue to propagate hate speech and tribalism?
Let's now leave the question of prayer. We keep to pray.
But I
and
prayed
so that
this
you
morning,
pray, yes.
and I'm going to pray today, tomorrow,
And
and
it's
Wednesday.
a solution to,
it is a solution
to the
yes.
challenges that
it
we
just
are
needs
having
to
in
be
this
genuine.
country.
Yes.
Now the problem is how to tell when it's genuine and not is now another question that we may not exhaust on this set. But Peter, let's come to the question of Ekura Aukot. He has been traversing parts of the country, at least in the last 1 week or so. But there are reports that his running mate seems to be saying, no, I'm quitting. That's Emmanuel Nzai seems to be pulling out. Are we likely to see him go to the ballot alone? And what does that kind of implication, if Emmanuel Nzai indeed confirms that, listen, I've withdrawn from, I'm no longer Ekura Aukot's running mate, what does that imply?
That really puts Ekura Aukot in a big jeopardy, because it threatens his own candidature on that ballot paper. But before I delve into that,
You want to talk about prayer again?
yeah, let me just say something about prayer. Prayer is very important.
You have remembered the verse?
No, I'm not remembering the verse. Martin, do you know the Bible more than you? So let's not go there. I think prayers is very important. Yes. And if I had a chance to attend the President's prayer, I would have attended it. It's in his rightful right to call for prayers, and I think those who prayed for us, we really appreciate them. On Ekura Aukot's case, still is an allegation, and if it's true that that his running mate is going to leave him out there in the cold, then I think he's a person who's in trouble, because on the very ground of that, his candidature can be challenged even in court of law, and that can even throw us even into more spin of confusion. But let's look at the question that you asked. That is very, very pertinent. Why are we here? Because the reason why we are here is because of historical injustices that we've had. Issues of economic inequality, issues of corruption, issues of nepotism. And someone sitting somewhere is saying that, and is feeling that if my person is not in there, then we are not there. If our tribe is not in there, then we are not there. We have been locked out from this for very many years, and we think that we've been locked out in a manner that is unjust. And this thing has been stolen from us for this long, and this time around, we are not going to let go. And that kind of political poison, that kind of emotional poison around the air, that is what is making this thing very, very, a bit delicate. And the question is, that is on the air, we are going into election on Thursday. The question is, should we go for these elections or should we not go for these elections? And I've seen many religious leaders. I saw my friend Mr. Sosion saying that we should not go for these elections. I saw the people from the political divide from Jubilee saying, you know what, the law allows us to go for these elections. And yes, the law allows them to go for these elections. And because the Supreme Court rightly directed the IBC to conduct another elections in 60 days. I think that's what they're doing. And it's within the constitutional realm that they're doing these elections. The only question is, the person who is going to be elected, be it Raila or be it the president right now, yes, the process will be legal, but will it have the legitimacy that it deserves? Because if one of the candidates, main candidates have pulled out, then you've gone into election on yourself. And if you looked at the president's body language yesterday after his prayers, And if you look at the adverts that are going on in the media houses, the president and his DP, they're trying to insinuate and say that, listen, after 26, try to go to your neighbor and shake your hands with him. After 26, always acknowledge your neighbor. After 26, still go back and beg for the salt you've been begging for, or try to cooperate the way you've been cooperating. There's a message they're trying to send there, that after 26, there's going to be some level of tension. That's what I'm interpreting from their statements. And if they acknowledge that there's going to be some level of emotional divide, or rather level of tension, then I think this is a time when now, in fact, even Chebukati himself, the chairman of the IBC, should rightly look at Regulation 64, which kind of gives him an opportunity to adjourn an election when he feels that he's not going to really win the spirit of that election. This is why I'm saying that. He, in his statement, said, and there are two things about Chebukati's statement, the chairman's statement. Yeah. One, he's acknowledging that he has put down all the logistics for the election. For me, that is very pertinent. I give that 70%. If there are logistics, ballot papers are going to arrive in time, there's security, the systems are going to work right. For me, that is very fundamental, and I give it 70%. But he's also saying that the mood and the circumstances under which he's working may not allow him to do this job. So that I give 30%. If we are at 70% and not 30%, I think we have a problem. And the chairman has already acknowledged we have a problem. So I think I may join other Kenyans in urging him to find it wise and fit to adjourn this election.
But don't you think that Chebukati finds himself in a catch-22, if I may say? Because on one hand, if he says that he's going to proceed with this election, NASA will see him as pro-Jubilee. If he postpones this election, Jubilee will see him as pro-NASA.
That is right.
And then you're talking about the mood. What can we do then to ensure that the mood is conducive when you can see for the last 60 days, NASA and Jubilee have been talking at each other, not to each other?
You know, Martin, I think that's where the question of who should call for the dialogues that people have been calling for, who should handle this dialogue, you know, who should push for it, comes to play. Right now, we know that opposition leader Raila Odinga has said that now the period for dialogue is over. And we know that even Chebukati last week tried to bring the parties together to have a conversation.
He's expected
to meet the president today, but really of what value is, or rather what should we expect from this conversation when there is already a hard line? I have always been of the opinion that a dialogue is sort of like a mediation process where you come in without really having hard lines and saying that, look, this is my interest. My interest is to have an election, and I want to have an election because I think the country is the country is unstable economically speaking, because I think we just need to move forward and we need to forge forward as a country. But then you have an opposition leader who's saying, look, I don't think we need to have this election. Why? Because I feel that there are so many irregularities. I feel that there's compromise within the IEBC. So I think the whole purpose of these talks is there can never be an honest dialogue when parties are not willing to sit at the table. When you have parties sitting separately, when you have, the leader of the opposition saying, I'm going to meeting, when you have the leader of the opposition expecting the current president to come to a conversation and the president refuses to come, and then the president saying, I'm going to have my separate conversation with Chebukati, then clearly we are still at a stalemate. There really isn't anything fruitful that's going to come out of those dialogues, other than both parties stating their hard lines and saying, we are sticking to this right to the end. I think right now, international organizations need to make their voice heard. And I know that Kenyans would want to say that, we do not want the interference of the international organizations. They would want to say that, the church has been silent on so many issues before. Why should we listen to them right now? What gives them the credibility? What gives them the voice right now? But I think this is the time where every well-meaning citizen who thinks that I want to see my country move forward, I want to see, unity restored. I want to see nationhood reignited. I want to see togetherness. I do not want to see deaths happening on 26th or days after that, or even on that particular day. I hope that my brothers and sisters who are serving as IEBC officials are safe. I hope that, my friends who are serving as clerks, or I hope that our relatives who are even within the commission, that they are safe. I think if every citizen is concerned about the well-being of this country, then no one should begin to question who is calling for dialogue. No one should begin to even question the wisdom of Chebukati if he decides to say that, we are not going to have an election, because just as Peter has said, the country is right now highly polarized, extremely divided, and we just need Solomonic wisdom. And we don't know where this wisdom is to come from, but wherever it shall come from, whether it comes from the mountains or comes from the hills or from the valleys, we need that kind of wisdom. We need a man or a woman, or we need men or women, or organizations or institutions that will be able to sit down these leaders and tell them, look, much as you want to have an election, much as you're saying no reforms, no elections, what does this mean for the country? Should we expect to see more lives lost because you have said no reforms, no elections? Should we expect to see lives being lost on 26 because you have said an election has to happen by force? You know, at this point, this is where we need to calm down and bring down our egos wherever we stand, regardless of our positions. And when I say bring down our egos, I'm not just directing this message to the presidential candidates. I'm talking about the ordinary citizen who's voting. I think this is the time where you who has decided to vote on 26th needs to sit down with yourself and ask yourself that, how is this vote going to push this country forward? Would I rather sit down and say, you know what, I'm not going to have this election? Or how is my stance on not deciding, or rather, or not choosing to vote, going to push this country forward? Because let me tell you, this is the only country that we have. Our national anthem says, you know, "O God of all creations, bless this our land and nation." It's the only land we have. If it goes down, we cannot run anywhere.
But the problem is that seems now to be a cliche. This is the only country we have. We cannot run anywhere.
But
we have fighted all those things.
But honestly, Martin, where else are we to go? Where else are we to go?
That's the question. But now there's still a stalemate. Chiloba says he's going for a 3-month leave.
I don't
think
believe him.
NASA... Yes.
I don't believe him.
No,
because
NASA's been having a problem with Chiloba. Do you think now with his 3 weeks break?
Come on, Martin. There's always been a call for him to step aside or give the rest of the team an opportunity to run the show, but he's always been there. He's going on leave today. He's supposed to be going on leave today. That is according to the information that we have. But he's going on leave when we have 2 days to the elections. So does it even make any difference? It doesn't to me. Normally when you go on leave, you always leave your house in order. You say, okay, so this guy is taking up this job, this guy is taking up this job, this will run like this. But 2 days to election, really, it doesn't make any difference. But this is my concern about the precipice, or rather the uncharted waters that we find ourselves in. President Uhuru Kenyatta, when he was in Baringo, he expressly, categorically said that he's not going to dialogue with anybody. The only person he can talk to is the common mwananchi, who has got the ultimate say. Raila Odinga was very expressive when he said that his window of dialogue is already closed. So any person who is trying to bring dialogue, maybe as we speak now, may only have an opportunity to bring dialogue after 26. After 26, that's after Thursday. And after the poll, to be specific. And how are you going to bring dialogue after the polls? Because from the look of things, when Uhuru Kenyatta is going to go into this election, the way he's saying, obviously we know the result. Is definitely going to come out the winner. If definitely.
So,
let's not even.
Kaluyu is a candidate.
Is a candidate, but definitely let me finish. Let me finish. He cannot surprise you. The reality that we have on the reality that you know and I know, is that the way it is now, if Raila is not going to take part in this, and the way he had already pulled out, definitely Uhuru Kenyatta is going to emerge the winner. On the background of that winning, I think legally, not even that I think, legally, the returning officer is going to move the notice of motion to the CJ, and the CJ definitely has got any other iota of chance, or rather any other reason not to.
But anybody can challenge as well.
After that. Now I'm being very, and I'm going step by step.
Yes.
Then after that, when now the CJ has already, given him the mantle legally, then he becomes the president. Him being by the time he's already the president, then any person trying to use any other law or any other means outside the Constitution will start having a framework of treasonous, definition of treason coming into play. And when that happens, the president can come down with a lot of ruthlessness, because on the background of that, he can say that it's only protecting the statehood and is only protecting the Constitution and the people of Kenya. That is the problem, and that is going to be the hallmark of our problems in this country. So if there is any dialogue, Martin, we ensure that that dialogue happens before 26th. That is when it's going to make sense.
72 hours.
72 hours that we have. But if it doesn't happen before 26th, then we have a problem.
Do you think if we have a dialogue before 26th, it can pave way for an election still on 26th?
What we are having right now, and the solution that we're having as a people, is not even a legal solution. It's a political solution. Let me tell you, if Kenyans are to talk today, is if their leaders talk.
Yeah.
If today Uhuru Kenyatta shakes hands with Raila Odinga, then you'll see people talking. In fact, you'll see the tensions easing.
Let me ask a rhetorical question as we bring this to an end, because our politics is up next. Ruth.
Yes.
I've asked this rhetorical question elsewhere. Assuming you go to the polls on 26th, Raila says, I'm not participating in this poll, but his name is on the ballot.
Yeah.
People vote, and then it turns out he's the winner. What happens? Does he come now to say that now that I'm a winner? Of a process you...
Well, that would be quite interesting, because remember, we are still waiting to hear what Raila has to tell his followers on 25th. Well, maybe on 25th, he might just decide to change his mind and say, my people, I have just acknowledged that my name is on the ballot, so can we get out and vote? So it would be quite an interesting turn of events, and clearly it would be speaking of the fact that citizens are determined, regardless of what their leaders say, to make a choice. You know, they're independent, they have an independent mind, because, you know, on the one end, Raila is saying, please don't go and vote. So if on that particular day, it's so turns out by the power of, I don't know, that would be, you know, powers from above, that people go to vote regardless of the party leaders' directives, then I would say that would be a great step to democracy moving forward. And, well, I don't know. I don't know if you expected me to answer this because it was a rhetorical question.
No, it was a rhetorical question.
That will be Raila's political disaster. Let me tell you, if Raila Odinga says that people go for election on the 25th, he will lose. This is why he will lose. Because most of a big chunk of his supporters, some of them are in the city, yes, and they will want to go back to the villages to vote, and that is the time when those big buses will not be moving.
But really, how many of them are in the city?
It makes a big difference.
How many of them are in the city?
It makes a big difference.
We wait to see what is going to say. That is on 25th. He says he's going to make a statement. We wait to see what will that statement be about. A day to the poll, and does he have the power to reverse what he has been telling people that do not turn up and vote, assuming he comes and says, now I'm going to participate. That's why we bring this to an end. That is in the headlines, and we'll be coming back tomorrow with another edition of the program In the Headlines. We want to take a break, and usher in Mili Luanga, who is now going to talk about this from a legal perspective, from Chapter 1 of the Constitution to that on transition and consequential provisions. She will be taking you through all that. We take a break. Good Morning Kenya continues. Stay tuned.